Throughout the years, wrestlers have found inventive ways to retaliate against squared circle critics. Given the stage they have to do it, they usually come away the victor too. That's just the way these things work. To get that power back, we should rank them, however, so that's what we're going to do. You can do or say what you want, but the list always wins. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 Awesome Ways Wrestlers Got Back at Critics. Number 10, Triple H in the 2000s. While WWE will give up on a push on a whim in 2019, that wasn't the case 20 years ago when it was time to get Triple H to the top of the mountain. The issue was a lot of people inside the company and outside of it weren't sure this was the right idea. Having two huge fans in Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels helped, but it left the promotion in an interesting position. On the one side was Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was smashing everything into dust currently. On the other were those preparing for the future. The latter revolved around Triple H as he tried to find his way between the Rattlesnake and the Rock. That is not easy. Before he did prove himself, which he most definitely did, it was determination that won out before anything else. Mick Foley tipped the scales in January 2000 to show people the game could be both a player on the mic and in the ring. Before December was here, there was no two ways about it. Trips was the man, and he should have been. Moving past the whole criticism that he just talked like this, and talked like that, he took the negative press and stuck it down their throats by being awesome. Not a bad spot to be in, just when WWE was hitting its peak either. Number 9, Peyton Royce versus Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer's thoughtless 2018 remarks regarding Peyton Royce's augmentation was misconstrued, but it was also an inane observation to make and saw the Wrestling Observer rightfully taken to task by the Iconics member. Noting that she was, and I quote, a lot lighter in the developmental league, Meltzer's focus on size, regardless of what he was technically referring to, highlighted an archaic approach to his analysis. By the same token, Royce's correct response was a reminder that wrestlers can bounce back criticism should they wish. In fact, in the world of social media, they should. Having a one-way conversation never works. Naturally, this led to a Twitter pile-on that got out of control as it always does, but Meltzer's failure to understand the gravity of his remarks ahead of an eventual apology furthered the pressure. Royce highlighted just how hurtful this all could have potentially have been, noting how the general attitude towards physical appearance stood to cause greater damage than just hurt her own feelings. Was right. It's only fair to point out that Meltzer did apologize for this and own up to his mistake, but it was Peyton's handling of it that was the real focus, especially as she continued to improve on the main roster and right now is a tag team champion. Number 8, John Cena's 2011. WWE dropped the ball in 2011. The summer of Punk fell off the rails before long, which did upset fans. The one constant was John Cena. No matter what, he stood firm and tall, trying to keep the ship from sinking. Far from just a dude that was there to react to Punk, Cena was the perfect opponent for the voice of the voiceless as he flew up the card. John proved throughout all that the criticisms he had come in for a few years earlier were either an overreaction or matters of the past. The main thing was that while Punk was fighting his way through programs with Triple H and Kevin Nash, Cena kept the title scene somewhat warm as he had 3 straight pay-per-views against Alberto Del Rio. In one, they had to scrap in a ring that had been destroyed thanks to Mark Henry and the Big Show. It meant when Survivor Series came around, Punk was able to shake all these mismatches off his back and finally have his proper title win after beating Del Rio at the pay-per-view. May seem like a stretch, but this may not have worked if it wasn't for John Cena. That was a country mile away from those on the internet who would point a stick in his direction and say he was nothing but a drain on the business and couldn't wrestle. As it turned out, he was alright. Number 7, John Cena's 2015. This became a thing because a few years later, Big Match John did it again. His last full year before he started to transition out of wrestling and into movies, Cena dedicated months of his schedule to getting over as many mid-carders as possible thanks to his US Championship challenge. Hilariously, this was met with groans at first. Cena won it from Rusev at WrestleMania 31, which seemed needless, but it wasn't. Those just below the top of the card did need him, and he was going to take all that star power and share it around the whole roster. Seth Rollins also took advantage by filling in on top at the same time, and while that was happening, Cena went against the likes of Neville, Cesaro, and Sami Zayn for the now pretty prestigious title and produced awesome matches. Every opponent looked decent even in defeat, meaning everybody was benefiting, and in many ways it was wrestling perfection. It was the highlight of Raw most weeks, and even when WWE dropped the ball elsewhere, everybody was always excited about who Cena would be facing. Fell off eventually, as the US title always does, but for a while there, it was heartwarming, and it was damn precious. Number 6, Naito versus New Japan. Tetsuya Naito's excellent Tranquillo turn ultimately proved to be the missing piece of a puzzle New Japan Pro Wrestling had struggled to complete for years. It got him over as inarguably the most popular star in the company, but they did it in the polar opposite manner to how they'd expected. Naito's G1 climax climax victory in 2013 was designed to be the catalyst for his heroic ascent, but instead it sowed the seeds for a very unusual twist. His hard-earned Wrestle Kingdom 8 title shot was greeted with disdain by the audience and current IWGP champion Okada, so much so that NJPW offered fans the opportunity to vote for what contest should main event the Tokyo Dome. In a damning reveal, Tanahashi and Nakamura's IC title won the poll, kicking what should have been the biggest match of Naito's life into a semi-main event slot. That's the power of democracy. Heading to Mexico in the aftermath of this snub changed everything. Joining CMLL's Lost Ingobernables group, he brought the brand new attitude back to Japan, and eventually formed a Japanese version of this to become the hottest performer in the organization. He took the rejection and through it became the person he was always meant to be. That, my friends, is how we deal with negativity. Number 5, Edge and Lita versus the fans. It wasn't a great time for Edge and Lita when it turned out they'd been seeing each other behind Matt Hardy's back. This was even worse because Lita and Matt were engaged and Hardy and Edge were best friends. Oh dear. There was a lot of heartache privately, but after Matt had released the information to the public, it reached wrestling fans too, and in the months that followed, the pair became public enemy number 1. It was uncomfortable for everybody involved as the audience hijacked countless shows until WWE had no choice but to put them together. It was the only way to deal with it. A feud between Hardy and Edge didn't help, so instead the Rated R superstar just embraced the idea and played up to what fans thought anyway. He basked in the fact he was an asshole, and with Lita by his side, he flew to the top of the card with a swaggering confidence. It even resulted in him winning the first Money in the Bank briefcase. A New Year's resolution 2006 win over John Cena was just another step in this journey, and by the end of the year that was that. Edge was a made man, all because he'd taken this heat and thrown it back out into the ether. May not have been fair from a life point of view, but it absolutely did work. Number 4, Roman Reigns 2016 to 2018. Even though everybody hated him, Roman Reigns still rose to the top of the WWE machine throughout 2016. It is a bit like a science experiment these days, but we can't change the past as much as we may want to. Our names aren't Marty McFly. Unless it is, and if so, hello Marty. It was a roller coaster too, because he showed everything he needed to when wrestling the WWE Championship away from Triple H, and had pretty damn good matches against AJ Styles. Everyone forgets that now. However, Reigns also got popped by the wellness policy, which no one saw coming. It made all this bizarre ride stranger still. After a brief suspension, it was back to the usual, even if the big dog hung around just below the highest tier for a little bit. When he was here though, he arguably smashed it even more. Feuds with Rusev, Kevin Owens and Braun Strowman all had at least one match that made mediocre pay-per-views far better, and that all happened as fans booed and jeered. It was clear it didn't matter what was going to happen next, it was done even if Reigns had 5-star match after 5-star match. And you know what Roman did too? He got his head down and carried on for the good of the company. He showed how much drive he has, which ironically is another tribute you need to be the focal point of WWE. He pushed forward even if people were saying he was an asshole, and he never compromised once. Is there a better way to ignore your critics than that? Number 3, the making of The Miz. The Miz was once so despised he wasn't even allowed in the locker room. Looked down upon because of his transition from the reality world to WWE, he was judged because he hadn't cut his teeth on the indie scene. As far as everyone else was concerned, he had gone to the big dance on his celebrity alone, and that wasn't cool. What worked for the A-lister though was hard work, time and tenure. Showing a clear dedication to the craft saw his confidence skyrocket, and by 2010 he was the best heel in the company and the only choice for that year's Money in the Bank. Everybody knew fans would hate this, and Miz was ready to lap it up and then some. Post this, his career stalled a little after a world title feud with John Cena got derailed by The Rock, but he still fought through this slight slump and kept on working as hard as he could. He even reversed a terrible face turn in 2014 when more critics were circling. He doubled down on everything to become as great as he was before, and probably actually made himself even better. No one would have predicted it almost a decade ago, but in 2019, make no mistake about it, WWE would be worse off without The Miz. He is the company in many ways, and never lets a bad turn or bad decision throw him off course. That's why he is where he is now, because he kept an eye on the long term and made sure he got there in one piece. Number 2, the Young Bucks in 2018. It's no surprise that the Young Bucks have hordes of fans who love them regardless. They've earned this, and there are few wrestlers better at engaging with their audience than Matt and Nick. For some reason though, in 2018, a small contingent popped up and said that they didn't know how to sell or work a proper match. Do you know what they did? Put together a series of psychological heavy thrillers in New Japan Pro Wrestling and around the world. Flub you, critics. Matt Jackson's back became a target for opponents to work off, and it was so convincing that even some news sites reported that he was going through an injury. They particularly smashed it in the East as the brothers graduated to NJPW's heavyweight tag team division to set up something of a doubles dream rematch at Dominion 2018 against Evil and Sanada. There they did indeed win the belt, and during it they also twisted things again by drawing focus to a Nick foot injury rather than relying on Matt's bruised back. He just didn't know what was next. In short, it meant the Bucks now offered the best of everything. Old school ring work or high flying power, they also had a bunch of tricks up their sleeves and knew when to roll them out. And if All In is anything to go by, they can also take a 25-minute match and do it in 46 seconds, and this is the reason they are where they are. They're good, everybody should probably just accept it. Number 1, making a point with All In. When Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks said they were going all in, it was unsurprisingly met with the usual internet negativity. Still going on with AEW, even though the threesome have already proven they do know what they're doing. Doesn't guarantee success, but for now it probably should buy them the benefit of the doubt. No matter how you want to spin it either, All In was a home run from every direction, the reason we find ourselves in the position we do today. It got people talking, and not just the fans, those with the power and the money also wanted a piece of the pie. Starting when Dave Meltzer questioned whether the trio could sell 10,000 tickets, it was a wonderful tale of taking the Being the Elite concept and paying it off with a fan-friendly September event that put smiles on everyone's faces. For years, WWE or nothing had been the saying, but this proved that definitely wasn't the case anymore. Cody especially had probably stepped into his rightful shoes given his dad was Dusty Rhodes, and if he grew up with indie wrestling in the early 2000s, all of this seemed like an impossible dream. And don't forget, it all happened just to prove the most famous wrestling news writer wrong. Know of any other awesome ways wrestlers got back at critics? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will talk to you again soon.